Another important Dominican moment, there's quite a few actually in Don Bosco's life, but a very strong Dominican moment was in 1869 when the Vatican Council was opening in Rome, and a certain Archbishop of San Francisco, Joseph Sadak Alemany, traveled to Rome, but he stopped first of all in Spain, made his way to Turin, and stopped at the oratory that Don Bosco had, the youth center Don Bosco had, to ask Don Bosco for help in San Francisco with young people, because there were many young people at risk. We finally got to San Francisco in 1897, and again began working with the Franciscans, who made it possible, with the Vincent de Paul Society, with the Dominicans, and with the Jesuits. So we were working right away from the beginning with these groups in evangelization, especially of migrants. That's what we were doing. So our students were able to enroll in the GTU in 1972 as students of DSPT. 2 years later, we had the house and we moved in. And so the first brothers who were doing theology here for the first 4 years were all enrolled in DSPT. We saw with our formation committee that the Dominican ratio for formation was very similar to our ratio for formation. And so we said, let's do this. We want to make sure that we've got them grounded in this approach of our study of theology. I've got 2 courses in ecclesiology, and one is called In Search of the Church, which is really about trying to understand how the church is. So it's foundations in ecclesiology, or a theology of church, ecclesiology, theology of church. And the other church course that I teach, I call Church on the Move. And it's really about the movements or lay ecclesial movements in the church that have arisen in the last 150 years, and more specifically have flourished since World War II. We're talking about a journey that doesn't just start with me and my wanting to go to church, or not church, or my congregation. It goes back through the centuries to the apostles. It goes back to Jesus, but it goes back before Jesus to Moses. It goes back before Moses to Abraham. It goes back through the whole thing. So these words, and to look at how Israel speaks of God calling his people, assembling his people, how Israel's called to be a light to the nations that God wants to assemble together. And we really look at it and we realize that both in the Hebrew Scriptures and in the New Testament, the word for church is not a noun, it's a verb. It's an assembling. And God is doing the assembling. It's a vocation. And God is doing the vocando. He calls. Vocation comes from vocare, to call. He calls. God calls. What do I like most about teaching at DSPT? Well, I enjoy the coming together of the students from different backgrounds. Some are very young. They've just finished their college, their undergrad, and they're starting. And they're very excited and very nervous about this, And some are older. Some have been pursuing ministry for a number of years. They're active in the parishes. And this is one, it gives me a sense of the local church, many coming from our diocese of Oakland or San Francisco or close by. And they're involved in ministry and they want more. And I find this is great because it really puts me in touch with what's going on in the local church, what's going on around here. And I learn a lot from these students. And others are pursuing religious vocations. And for some of them, it's very quick, and for some of them, it's very long, It goes on for a long time. But they also come in with experience, with learning, with knowledge. So it's a grad school, but it's also a forming of a community.